All right, it looks like we're live. Hopefully, this is working. I already tried one time.
I got
Let's
it
see.
working here. So
Yeah, nice. You're new to our program. This is your debut. I'd like to introduce you to everyone. This is Christopher Collins. How do you want to be designated? Do you want to handle, or do you want to just be known as Chris?
you can make a handle. I'm fine with that.
Well, it's up to you. You'll have to create one. You can go by your Twitter screen name if you want to, and that way everyone can follow you.
Sure. That's fine.
Most
That sounds
excellent.
fine to me. Can you
Excellent,
hear me
excellent,
on that
excellent.
end?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. Can you hear us?
Yes.
And then I'm also joined by Trekkie Rob. Rob, who we haven't seen on the show in a long, long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. I can't even remember the last time we talked.
I like your regalia that you have going on there. Very nice.
I've got more, but I didn't have time to put them all on. I've got more.
I have it's a weird interface. I have no idea what's going on, if this is actually being seen on YouTube.
Oh, it's on YouTube. I have
others.
it on my other device right here.
Oh, right. Oh, whoa, look at that.
I have it on my iPod, so it's definitely streaming.
Can you test something and chat to us from your other stream?
Exactly.
And see if it works.
Well, Trek on the Tube says he physically can't join us today.
Oh, I know, but ask him. Okay, well, no, never mind. Don't worry.
Just did it in the YouTube stream.
Cool. So, all right. Well, today's big topic, the reason we're having the summit of sorts is because we got some. What's that?
I said summit. That makes it sound really important.
Well, sure. Why not? We're all pretty important in our own minds sometimes. Anyways, in this Star Trek Starfleet Boys Summit, very official, very formal today. We're gonna talk about the big news, which is Patrick Stewart announced that he is returning to the role that he's very famous for, Jean-Luc Picard. And that a show is in the works and that it will be available at some point soon. That's pretty much all the official news about it, but there's a lot of assumptions and a lot of speculation, and I think that's something that frankly I'm just beyond excited. I'm actually under the weather. I'm recovering from an ailment of some kind. I'm not sure if it's a cold or a flu, but it's really beating me down. But this got me out of bed, and I just feel really compelled to talk about it, and I'm sure you guys may feel the same.
Yes.
I'm curious what they're going to do with this one. If it's going to be in the alternate universe, the J.J. Abrams universe, or if it's going to continue in the same universe, or what.
That's a really interesting thing to think about. I am going to guess that it's going to stay in the prime canon, because I think that's what makes most people happy. But it would be a way for, it'd be interesting, but I would think that like also if we were going to deal with like a Kelvin timeline, I think that's its official designation, a Kelvin timeline show, I would want to see like actors from, like Chris Pine or Zachary Quinto, etc., being the prominent features of that Enterprise.
Well, the other thing is, I wonder if they're going to make this like Deep Space Nine, where they just showed up and just introduced Picard, and he's just there to introduce the next crew. Because how bad would that be if we only get to see Picard and he's only there for introduction?
Oh God, can you imagine?
That would be pretty devastating. But there's a clue in the announcement, and that's that they're doing a whole show. So like, yeah, it would be kind of weird and disappointing, I think, to a degree, if it was just like, hello, I'm here to announce this brand new show. Goodbye. You know, like I don't think I could. I don't think I would.
Well, that
survive.
wasn't
But no,
necessarily what
I
Picard
do
did in
believe.
Deep Space Nine. He gave him a mission. Here, have the station. Now it's your job to, keep control of that part of the quadrant.
But if you recall Patrick Stewart's statement, he said that like his attraction to this project was that it was an opportunity to bring the voice of Picard back to our current times, to kind of like help a new generation to kind of get through some of these difficulties that we all experience on a day-to-day basis, whatever side of the argument you are on. One can easily say that like it's a very troubled time. So my belief is that it's definitely going to be we're going to see a lot of Patrick Stewart in the show. You know, and again, it's like I'm hoping, and I wouldn't be surprised if the next announcement isn't that more of or all of the TNG original crew don't sign up for this. And if I had to guess at the landscape, like, you know, at 20 years after Nemesis, that's like a long time. Like if Riker's even still commanding the Titan, he's like a very seasoned and kind of hardened you know, captain at this point, but he may be an admiral. I mean, like 20 years later, I mean, I know Riker's slow to promote because he likes to stay he gets sentimental. He wanted to stay first officer when he had a chance to be promoted you know, so soon. But I would hope that his and Troy's marriage is still successful and that they're very happy. There's hints in that alternate timeline from All Good Things that Picard and Crusher and Beverly get together, but that their marriage actually doesn't work out because they're divorced. But she keeps her last name, I guess, or something like. I can't remember too much. I have to watch the episode again. But that's obviously an alternate reality. But who knows how much of that will influence Picard's decisions. There's also, yeah, it's just 20 years is great because we really don't know what is going to be going on. It could be anything, and it's kind of exciting to see that.
I'm curious if they'll keep the All Good Things uniform or they'll go to a different route.
I think that like what I've noticed, the growing trend is like uniforms seem to change every like 3 to 5 years in Starfleet. Right. So I doubt
uniforms appear again too at the end of Voyager and the end game.
That's a nice consistency. So how many years is Admiral Janeway in the future in that, you know, is future? Does anyone know off the top of their head how far ahead Admiral Janeway of the future is from the
remember that's an alternate universe that Janeway altered too, so
that's true. But like these alternate universes can hint at some of the things that might be occurring in the actual universe, because like you never
say that too about All Good Things, but then the Enterprise D got destroyed, so
this is true.
The next movie.
We just reviewed the episode or talked about with Sean from Trek on the Tube, Matter of Time, and I saw that you left a lot of comments, and I'll go and, as I love to do, read them and properly give them the attention they deserve. But in that episode, you know, Picard makes the argument of like, if you know something about the future, you can share it because my future hasn't been written yet, you know? And so that's exactly, I think that's exactly how the perspective I like to take in reality as well. Is like, who knows what's going to happen? But you know, the reality that we have to learn from is that like Star Trek is a TV show, and it's at the whim of producers and directors and writers and like it's not just one person. It's like a creative smorgasbord. And so who knows what's going to happen? So the decision to scrap the D in Generations someone must have thought, well, what if we wanted that different, you know, what if we wanted it to become this or whatever? But ultimately the E is logical, and it sits in our prime timeline, so it's you know, so I guess it's just, we're just gonna have to see what Alex Kurtzman and his group can do. And I do think that like there's enough, especially Patrick Stewart, and in terms of the core of the character, I saw a lot of concern about, is it going to be the Picard that we know and love? Well, he's going to be a 20-year older Picard, so he's allowed to change. And then secondly, I think that Patrick Stewart is the best person who can inform us of that, and he's on the project. So it's not like we're getting a different actor or a new actor to play Picard. It's much like how I trust, whenever William Shatner plays Kirk, it's going to be a genuine Kirk experience. I trust in the same way that whatever way Picard will be, it'll be a genuine Picard experience.
So what do you think, Picard, what role will he have, do you think? Because I know a lot of people have been putting up polls and discussing that on Twitter.
Yeah, it'd be bad if we come back and all they find is that he's back on the farm in France again.
Why would that be bad? I think that might be wonderful to have. I mean, think about it. He's going to be in his like 80s or 90s. I don't know Picard's age at the end of Nemesis, but 20 years later, he's going to either be semi-retired or doing something a little more leisurely. Maybe we'll get Downton Abbey in space. It might be nice. No, I'm just kidding. But,
if I wanted to see Picard, he would be doing archaeology.
Yeah,
because that seemed a lot more interesting than seeing him back on the farm in France, going for the grapevines.
I mean, he could be based on the farm in France and then go on these, archaeological digs and stuff like that. Certainly, that I think is definitely going to be a part of his life, because it's such a strong part of the Picard character, and I think that would be an error to omit or not cultivate. But I would like to think that he moved on to being an ambassador, and I like a lot of the theories that because of his mind meld that you're seeing on the internet, that because of his mind meld with Sarek and with Spock, it's very possible that influences him, and so he becomes an ambassador. And in All Good Things, he is Ambassador Picard. So again, I know it's an alternate timeline, but it may hint at like choices that Picard himself might make as a character.
If I think of Picard, the first thing I think of is like he's diplomatic. That's the thing he does. He solves diplomatic problems. So it would make sense. I think that's the obvious thing for him to be some sort of ambassadorial role. But I like the idea of him being like an archaeologist and like having like episodes where it's like Indiana Jones style adventures, or the adventures of Picard and Vash.
I love Vash, but I think she's so bad for him. I think that at that age, they can be friends, or they can be friends or correspondents, but she's she's a bit mischievous.
Hey, Vash is like the Marion of Star Trek. Marion from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It's actually, that is a good point. Like, but I don't know, something worries me. I feel like Vash will be the undoing of Picard. No,
I thought maybe he'd be like a professor of like archaeology at Starfleet Academy, but I know they've already announced or hinted at there's going to be a separate series about Starfleet Academy. So I wouldn't have thought. I guess they probably aren't going to have Picard at Starfleet Academy and then another series about Starfleet Academy. So that's probably not going to.
There's a lot of people who say, oh, it'd be, Picard could have. Well, really, Picard could do whatever he wants. I mean, he's the most, he's the most famous. If you look at Star Trek as a whole, like in universe, he's probably surpassed Kirk in many ways in terms of his deeds and his fame. And so I would think that Jean-Luc, even in the best of both worlds, he pretty much has that one conversation with his childhood friend in his village, says, because of what you did for humanity, basically, and for the Federation, you can have any job you want. So what are you going to do next? And he like invites him to do that geological, work or whatever. But I think that like it wouldn't be surprising if Picard went from captain and accepted the rank of admiral. That would not surprise me at all. It wouldn't be surprising if he served for a stint as the commandant of Starfleet Academy. It wouldn't be surprising if he's an ambassador also, and that's his second career or whatever after he retires from Starfleet. So any of those options I would think are very logical. To be serious, I don't think he's quite going to be on the Vineyard, but again, it depends. He may be semi-retired, so maybe the Vineyard will come into play as a character in the new show.
Do you think it's too radical to suggest that he might be Federation president?
No, not even that. Like, again, I just don't see him doing that for a long time, though. Like, and he could serve his 4-year stint as president, and maybe it's something he's already done. Again, 20 years is such a long time that like he could have had all of those careers and still be an ambassador or something. I don't know. Who knows? But again, any of those choices would make me happy.
One thing, and one thing was, what kind of technology do you think will be since it's 20 years later, and we saw the end of Endgame with future technology, and we're altering the Prime Directive by using Janeway's technology that she brought from the future. Plus, you have where are we going 20 years later? Are we going to space? Are we visiting fluidic space again? Or are we doing some stuff in a different quadrant of the galaxy?
In the Voyager novels after Endgame, they start incorporating Voyager's technology into Starfleet ships. But I guess that might not necessarily happen in the series. Possibly, could they just gloss over that and pretend that never happened and just have, obviously it would still be advanced, but normal Federation technology?
Or are we using warp drive still? Are we using they were using transwarp drive and transwarp hubs in Voyager for the Borg space. So I'm curious if they incorporate that in 20 years in the future.
It'd be great to know. I don't know enough about it, but it'd be great to figure out what the date was of where we get those reveals in Voyager, because then you could kind of backtrack and see where you might be. And as you said, it was an alternate timeline. But I think the nice thing is that like whatever that they decide to do, I think there's a lot more freedom in a show that's set in the future than like, as you've seen with Star Trek Discovery, people get up in arms when you see something that's like anachronistic, like popping up in the past, like, to me, I'm kind of able to suspend my disbelief a little bit. You have to do it twice when you're thinking of a fictitious universe, because you're suspending your reality disbelief, and then you have to suspend the disbelief of the reality within that reality as well. So it's pretty crazy. But anyways, if you can do that, you can enjoy shows like Star Trek Discovery, because you're like, well, it's following the story, but the visuals are different. It's a new show, it's updated, and that's the same argument people have for Enterprise. On a very personal level, it irks me. I just don't like I like to go forward. I just don't like stories about the past unless it's like way back, like where it doesn't really matter what you're doing. So to me, for example, The Expanse is a great prequel to Star Trek,
right?
Because it takes place in a time that's unknown to Star Trek fans and minds and so on and so forth, and there's a lot of very interestingly similar landscapes that one could imagine are occurring. But anyways, that being said, to answer, kind of sorry about the roundabout way of coming to it, but to answer your question, I think that like that's kind of what's exciting, is that like we're going to get to see where the Federation, where technology, where everything is at. And what's wonderful is that like on another level, TNG was presenting us with technologies that we couldn't have imagined having. Like the iPad is a direct result of the technology being showcased or displayed on TNG. So now we get to see what theoretical technologies are on the horizon or are just being thought of here, because that'll be what's displayed in TNG, because they're going to have to like blow our minds with like the kind of stuff that they're using, in the show. But I hope the show, which I have a lot of confidence in, doesn't become a techno show. It's going to be always about the heart the heart is the story of these people, and like we get to see this bigger world through their eyes. I have a question for you guys, because you know a lot more about like Voyager and things like that. In the novels or anything else, is there any book or fiction or anything that deals with the effects of the hypernova, which leads to Spock going into the Kelvin timeline? Because I know that there's a comic book called Countdown in which some members of the TNG crew are actually involved, like Geordi are involved in helping Spock to create the red matter ship, the jellyfish ship that goes through the wormhole or whatever it is, that the hole in time and space that takes him to the Kelvin timeline. So, but that doesn't mean, so that means that according to Nero, the hypernova happened and Romulus was destroyed, right? Well, that's it. That's all so really, truly, that's a glint of information that we get about what's going on in the Prime universe, at some point. So to me, it's going to be very interesting because now you're going to have Romulan refugees. You're going to have like, a very different landscape in terms of what Romulan space looks like. And so I wonder what your thoughts are on post hypernova events.
What time Spock went into the Kelvin universe? Because Spock is pretty old, right? So I mean, it could have been after 20 years after Nemesis.
Well, it's highly unlikely because that comic book shows, just based on like kind of the way that the characters look in the comic book, I would say that it can't be more than 10 years after Nemesis. Like, so it might be somewhere in that middle ground between, you know what I mean? Like, but it's definitely not, I can't believe it's 20 years later that it happens. But that might be interesting if it is that far. But yeah, like who knows how old Spock is. And certainly the design of the Narada is something that I can see being a TNG era future tech, future design.
I can't speak to anything on the novels.
I can't, unfortunately. I haven't read that.
Ideas. Yeah, the hypernova is like on my mind. But
and the only J.J. Abrams movie I've seen is actually Star Trek Beyond. I haven't seen the other two.
Oh, really? Okay. So you're going backwards. You have to so you've got to definitely see Star Trek 2009. In my eyes, it's a beautiful kind of beautifully crafted homage to the original series, but while actually being a legitimate sequel to Star Trek Nemesis, which is it's an odd thing, but Spock kind of makes it possible because that's the Spock that's our Spock, prime timeline Spock, it goes into the Kelvin timeline. So by virtue of him, we all as fans travel, or as audience members travel into the Kelvin timeline. So it's pretty cool. And now I hope we're going back to prime timeline. It would be neat to see what the TNG era would look like accelerated into a Kelvin look, but at the same time I think that 20 years post Nemesis will give us enough space and time to get those advancements as well.
So you were saying about were you hoping to see all of the TNG crew or some of the TNG crew?
I would think that I want to see them all, like including Wesley. I think that it doesn't have to be a day-to-day interaction, but it would be nice that it would be nice if, whether it's through Picard or just like kind of peeking into everyone's lives. I'm a big fan of the show Fuller House. It's a sequel to Full House. Did either of you watch Full House when you were kids?
I've seen a few episodes.
All right. Well, Full House was like a favorite of the fan. We all gathered around to watch it, and Next Generation. And then today they just announced that Murphy Brown is coming back. So I'm beside myself because all my childhood favorite shows are just coming back. So it feels like, whoa, it's like kind of a neat thing. But what I like about Fuller House is that like there's a lot of unexpected developments, you know, and it takes place about 20 years after the original did as well. And there's a lot of unexpected developments, but a lot of things that are so the heart of the show is like exactly spot on like the original show was. So being a person who really loved and enjoyed that show, I'm loving it. And having a sequel series for the Next Generation. I mean, I don't think they're gonna call it Star Trek: The Next Generation Part 2,
No,
or more Next Generation, or even next generation, you know. But essentially, if it does have members of the TNG crew coming back as reoccurring characters, and we get to see where everyone's at 20 years later, it's definitely going to have that feel to an extent, and I'm all for it. Like, I think that would be wonderful, because I think TNG is such, like, the stories aren't finished, you know, like season 7, they don't just stop, like nothing happens, they don't retire. He just, the big difference is that he sits down to play a game of poker with the crew, but you can imagine that there's going to be a ton more adventures that we never see on screen. And so, you know, as the movies progress, we got to see where everyone kind of ends up, but there's so, you know, but that's the joy of it, is like you love seeing that Worf keeps somehow managing to come back from DS9, and like you know, Guinan even, like, you know, comes back, and you know, everyone. So I would love to see it. And it makes sense if Captain Picard is the central figure or the central focus of the show. It's safe to assume that unless they had like serious major fallouts, that they're all still friends, and that, you know, the central focus is going to be Captain Picard. So eventually we're going to meet every single character, because they're going to want to come and see the old man and see how he's doing, you know?
You don't think that would...
I want to see the Doctor come back.
Yeah. Wait, so that I want to talk about that for sure, but what were you saying, Rob?
I was going to say, you don't think that would detract from having, like, seeing some of the TNG crew, whether it's on the odd occasion or regularly, you don't think that would necessarily detract from exploring new characters? Because I know
no, not at all. And I'll use Fuller House as an example again, because you have like the original, like, you know, again, for those of you who don't know Fuller House, it's an odd thing to relate it to Star Trek. I get it, but just from a structural perspective, you know, in terms of like how the show could work, like Danny Tanner, Uncle Jesse, and Uncle Joey were the main kind of stories that we followed in the original Full House. Well, now they only come on every once in a while, and it's a live studio audience, so people go insane, as they would when Uncle Jesse comes on. So to that same effect, like, you know, it's going to be wonderful when Riker and you know, Riker and Troy and whoever, and Data, even, you know, in whatever incarnation Data might be, that's an interesting subject to talk about too. Or before as Data, who knows, you know, like whatever's going to happen. But as they come back, it'll be great. But whatever Picard's life is, it's safe to assume there's going to be new people that he interacts with. And in 20 years, he's probably made new friends and new relationships. So 100%. Hey, Doctor!
There you go.
Hello. You've joined the summit.
How are you?
The Doctor was just saying that Geordi's got to be in here after 20 years.
Where were you saying that? I didn't see you.
He's in the chat. He was saying it.
I can't see this bloody chat. I'm so annoyed.
I'm just here to stop to talk about Fuller House, man. I can't stand it anymore. You're supposed to be talking about Star Trek, and you're going on and on about Fuller House, man. What's going on?
Because did you hear Murphy Brown's back? Wait, did you hear Murphy Brown is back? That's like almost.
Yeah. I heard.
You remember how much I love Murphy Brown?
I was more interested in the Master Kim in the chat. He was saying about, what do you think the political spectrum will be in the quadrants after the Dominion War?
Ooh.
20 years later.
That's a really good question. Well,
and what happened to Romulus after Nemesis, and what the political situation is in Romulus.
Yeah, that's 100% going to be an interesting thing to find out about, but it all depends. Doctor, do you know when Countdown took place in the Star Trek timeline?
I heard heard to talk about it, and I have the comic right
Yay!
here, and which actually features Picard.
Oh, okay. Really?
It features Picard and Data and Geordi. Geordi is the one who helps engineer the ship that Spock.
I remember.
Right. And Picard's involved, and it's interesting to note that by this time Spock is actually a full-fledged citizen of Romulus. It says in the comic.
So that's where those thoughts came into my head from, because it's been like 8 years since I've read that comic.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it's like I forgot. My memory's not as good as yours is.
Well, I think it is worth looking at, because if I'm not mistaken, the story is by Alex Kurtzman. So we may have some clues as to what this new show is heading in material such as this, even though of course it's not canon, but it ties in very much so. And it
can inform canon,
and it acts as a bridge between. I mean, really, if you don't read this, you miss a lot when you see the first J.J. Abrams directed film.
Who signed your copy there?
Oh, the artist.
Wow, nice.
Yeah. This is in Chicago, yeah. But yeah, I think it's worth taking a second look at these comics, especially this one, because it features Picard. And
it's written by Alex Kurtzman.
It's co-written. Yeah, the story is right. He used to be partners with Robert Dorsey, I believe is his name. They were writing partners for a long time, and they worked on a lot of different things together. And Robert Orsi.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. Well, again, I have to say that to me, the 2009 Star Trek was like a nice. It hit a lot of great notes, and I think that like if they're behind it, there's a chance it's going to be if Kurtzman is behind it, and there's a chance it's going to be pretty satisfactory in its delivery. And then again, like I said, like I just feel like having Patrick Stewart, and I'm sure other people are going to want to be involved from the TNG production era, and may get the chance to be. And so I have a lot of optimism for this show, way more optimism than I did for Star Trek Discovery. How do you feel, Doctor, and everyone?
I'll go last.
I'm really excited. I don't really see how they can go wrong. I'm wondering whether we'll see any Voyager or DS9 cameos. As a Voyager fan, I thought that'd be really cool. But I'm really, really excited. Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm not in official capacity to answer this, but why not? Like, there's no reason why you can't have those cameos. And Kate Mulgrew, I think she'd be down.
Yeah.
And she was looking really great, mind you, at the STLV. I don't know if you guys saw her there. She's fantastic. She totally looks like Captain Janeway does.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
Oh, you're such a bastard.
Right.
I mean, I want to hear more. That press release they put out basically just talks about how great Patrick Stewart is. Didn't really give any details about the show. I don't know.
No,
and it focuses very much on Picard. It doesn't say anything about reuniting with old friends or any of that, press release kind of jargon they throw in as teases, when they put them out. So I actually wouldn't be surprised if we get something where it is just Picard with a bunch of new characters, and maybe, I mean, obviously they haven't even started the show. Maybe they'll think about a special guest star, I don't even know how. Is it supposed to be 10 episodes?
If you start watching Fuller House, the whole formula is there. about how they can be like
Lord.
100% serious when I say this. Like I'm telling you,
Well,
like,
but you know what?
The recipe's there.
Using your Fuller House theory, they did set out that was all put out in the initial press releases about the show. You know, they said, "Oh, we're going to have so and so back. We're going to have the families of so and so, and blah 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 blah." I mean, all that was part of the hype around the show. But it's interesting how this announcement is just focused on Patrick Stewart and Picard and nobody else. So I'm curious.
Is that just because he has the star power and that's going to pull people in? I wonder.
Probably.
But for Trek fans, I mean, even Geordi, I mean, anybody, Riker, Data, I mean, anybody would draw in interest. You know, it doesn't. I don't think to us, the fans, it matters. So I just think it's very interesting that you know, because obviously for new fans, I mean, they don't care. But for us, this is something aimed at us, and I think it's very interesting that they only chose to focus on Picard. So I don't know. Maybe it's some kind of scenario where Picard is it's a Rip Van Winkle kind of thing, or I don't know.
Rip Van Winkle, like he's been asleep for like 20 years.
He's thrust forward or something. I don't know.
Oh,
the other option is they could go make it like the animated Star Trek and then make everybody CGI. I guess that'd be the only other way you could get younger. I guess is if you went into the how CGI graphics or.
I couldn't hear what the rest of what you said, but maybe you did.
An animated Star Trek, I think, is something that does. I mean, I thought they were going to start doing that when the J.J. Abrams Star Trek came out. I'd be open to that.
But focusing on this thing, going back to what you were saying earlier, Doctor, I think that like if I had to speculate, I think that like, you know, it's part of the marketing hype kind of. I think they're like, let's do the big bomb drop at STLV here, and then welcome back, Chris. And then we're gonna stage, you know, I'm sure like now, you know, if they're not already on the, you know, on the books, that there's negotiations happening with the rest of the cast. At least the principals have all probably been spoken to about this. And I know that like Patrick Stewart's son made an announcement saying, "Oh, I've been keeping this secret for a while," or something like that. So, I mean, I'm sure that this has been in the works for some time. I honestly think that like, you know, and I didn't realize like maybe, or, you know, who knows, again, only CBS really sees this telemetry for certain, but I often wondered like the backlash from Discovery, if it's not because of that this is happening, and it might be that we're seeing this being put together in a little bit of a hurry to just kind of like get people to stop being so angry. I mean, like in the Star Wars fandom, like ugly stuff is happening over there, like really, you know, really bad stuff. And I could see it was starting to happen in, you know, there's this like fine line between where those of us who are trying to like give genuine critique, and we're being bunched up with like a bunch of people who are just like spewing hatred and like, you know, like stuff like that. And I think it's like, it's a genuine problem. And I wonder if the powers that be at CBS are like, no, we don't want this garbage, you know, happening here. So let's give the fans what they want. And I think that like they probably could have made like a quick deal and said, "Hey, Patrick, what's it going to take to get you back? Because we know we can do a show. We know we can get everyone else if we get you," right? And he's like, "Well, I wouldn't mind a couple more Shakespearean opportunities," you know. And then you got it. What else do you want? "Well, my own trailer would be nice, perhaps," you know. And you know, and so I'm sure that like something like that goes on in the background, and then we get shows. Like it's not, you know, it's not every show is born the same way, and I think that like, you know, I wouldn't be surprised that my hope is that the next big announcement, whenever that is, like in a few months, maybe tomorrow. Is that
Well, and
the
the other
rest
thing
of
is
the cast
Patrick
signs
Stewart
on.
doesn't have X-Men anymore. He's not going to go do any X-Men movies after the Disney deal, probably. So that's probably another reason why he's willing to come back to Star Trek.
I'm
That's
okay
true.
with I'm okay with whatever the reasons are. Welcome home, Patrick Stewart. Just bring it back. It's fine with me.
You know, I wonder if I mean, have you guys discussed the fact that perhaps he won't be in command of the Enterprise?
I think he definitely won't be, if I had to guess.
So who will be? Will it be the E or the F or the G?
Maybe there's something bigger.
Wouldn't it be interesting if they even decommission the Enterprise altogether to give it like a break?
Maybe.
Like if they're like, well, we're retiring the Enterprise.
So you're all okay with a Star Trek show with Picard but no Enterprise?
Maybe they could bring back Jellicoe.
Well, when you think about it, when the Next Generation cameos happened in Voyager and you saw Troy and Barclay, you never saw the Enterprise.
Well, yeah, I mean,
So,
and then I think established events
true.
are that, and I think the established events are that like Troy and Riker are on the Titan together. It's interesting because in the original series, the crew retired before the Enterprise was retired, and then in Star Trek 6, they're decommissioning the Enterprise, and the crew. That's it. The crew's like, all right, this is our last mission. But they'd already been kind of doing their own separate things. We just never saw it on screen. In the Star Trek 6 novel, I think Uhura's teaching at the Academy, if I'm not mistaken. Scotty's showing off the Klingon bird of prey that they captured in Star Trek 4 to a bunch of cadets or something like that. I mean, it's not. We like to think that they all just die on at their posts as old people. But just like we don't stay at all our favorite jobs necessarily, we move on and do other things and maybe get other experiences. I think it almost would be refreshing to see a show where the Enterprise is not the focus. Maybe it is a mention. Maybe imagine how impactful a scene would be where, let's say hypothetically, Ambassador Picard has to be ferried somewhere on the Enterprise. He gets to be on his old freaking ship and he gets all this nostalgia, or like Kirk and the Enterprise B, he's invited to the christening of the Enterprise F, like there could be.
What instantly came to mind then was that episode where Scotty is on the Enterprise and he's like an antique, and like everyone's treating him like, oh yeah, just stand over there. You don't know, and you're not of any use anymore. Picard will be this fossil that nobody will. He's irrelevant now.
I am of use, god damn it. I can still hear the variations in the deck plating of the I can't remember the sensor's name anymore. But I mean, I could definitely see a show that doesn't feature the Enterprise. In fact, I would almost expect it.
Well, his other, I mean, the Next Generation certainly showed that he had an intense interest in archaeology. So perhaps the show will be, Indiana Picard.
Chris or Rob were already saying that.
Oh yeah,
and,
okay.
Yeah, and they were comparing Vash to Marion, and so
Adventures of Picard and Vash.
There we go. I think that would make for a very interesting show, and one, that would help. It would help explain, why he's with a different set of people, and it could be it'd be an easy way to construct a standalone Picard story that won't mess with continuity too much.
And I could see
him. There's no continuity to mess with, Doctor. There's nothing beyond Nemesis as far as official canon. So it's an open book. It's whatever they want to make it, in a sense.
Well, I mean, they could still say something stupid, show something stupid like the new Klingons or something.
Oh God, no.
Man, I don't want to
Could you imagine a redesigned
right?
A redesigned Worf, and he's like, Mr. Wolf, there's something different about you. I just can't put my fingers on it.
No.
That being said, this could actually, in a weird way, legitimize Star Trek Discovery, because there can be references on the Picard show to things like earlier, Chris, you were wondering, well, what kind of warp propulsion do they have? The real Ketwalski made an amazing video on the Iconians, and how, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but he made an amazing video on the Iconians and how they may have been using the mycelial network to travel. And, you know, do you remember the Iconians, everyone?
Yeah.
What's that?
They were the ones that had that doorway that they could jump through in the second season.
And that's how they invaded, like they were an ancient civilization, and they invaded whole worlds that way, is through these these doors. And the visual evidence he uses is that you can see little blue spores kind of flying around on the way that they did the special effects. And it's totally not out of the realm of possibility that like the writers of Star Trek were like, oh, how does this work? Let's pick it apart and apply it to this, you know, this thing where in Discovery, that, you know, the spore drive could have been our own way of tapping into the mycelial network that doesn't work correctly. But maybe Picard comes across the classified documents about the USS Discovery and then connects it to the Iconians, because he's been obsessed with them for centuries, and now there's like a new way of traveling through this like same kind of network, and it opens us up where Star Trek is no longer a show just about, like, it's like, where do you go next, right? Well, Star Trek doesn't have to be a show about traveling through our own galaxy anymore. It could be a show that, like Stargate has done, where you actually can travel to other galaxies. And so if I'm able to come up with this kind of nonsense, like imagine what someone with, you know, way more time to invest in this could come up with. That might be amazing. But yeah, it doesn't reconcile the poor decisions in production design that Star Trek Discovery has made.
You actually did see the Iconian technology come back in Deep Space Nine in season 4, I believe.
What?
And
I don't remember that.
The Gamma Dog.
Yeah, they did. In the Gamma Quadrant, they went, the first time you see Wei Yun, that they were going after that technology to destroy it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Nice. This is why you need a summit. This is why summits are the best thing ever. I guess we should probably close up the chat at some point soon. But I just wanted to say that I ran a little poll on Twitter. I don't know if everyone here saw it, but the thing I asked in the poll is, I wonder what Star Trek TNG stories will get mentions of or follow-ups for on the new show featuring Sir Patrick Stewart as Picard. What are your guesses? Vote or propose your own thing. So the choices I gave people were a follow-up to Unification, a follow-up to Picard and Beverly, a follow-up to the Titan, or Wesley Crusher.
I'm really wondering if Wesley Crusher will come back. I mean, since he really is a big fan and everything, I'm wondering if they will bring him back.
I'm sure he'd love to be on this show, and I'm sure they'll accommodate.
I really would.
I'm sure they'll accommodate him somehow. But the overwhelming result so far, and there's still 8 hours left in the poll, is that people want to see what happens with Picard and Beverly, and it's gotten 60 votes so far.
Oh, yeah.
So, so that's probably, if that's a trend that's legitimate, then you can bet we'll probably see that as a big storyline. But I wouldn't mind any of those, and I'm sure they could fit all of those storylines. I think that someone pointed out that they didn't actually say it's like a mini series or like a, you know, like or a one-time event. It seems like it's going to be a show, so it sounds like there's going to be time to explore that.
I would be curious about something in Voyager. They were talking about holograms and hologram privileges, and I'm wondering where would that be in the 20 years after Nemesis, because you had Vic Fontaine in Deep Space Nine. You had the hologram, the Doctor, and he was making holographic rights towards the end of the 7th season. So I'm wondering if holo emitters are everywhere in the 20 years after Nemesis, or where that goes.
they seem to be everywhere on ships in the Star Wars universe, so I can't imagine that that's not easy to do in the future. And if you're gonna base technology based on what we have right now, we're getting to the point where augmented reality, like soon my glasses will just be able to give
Holographic
me,
emitters
you know,
everywhere on the
information.
ship,
Yeah.
and that was the Prometheus in season 4 of Voyager, which is right after Deep Space Nine, I believe.
Well,
Or
it would
the
be interesting.
last-
Yeah, what would be interesting to see is do those holographic people have rights, and are they recognized as, you know, people? Because it seemed like, you know, Vic, like you said on DS9, Vic Fontaine and certainly the
Moriarty.
holographic Doctor, and even Moriarty on Next Generation. You know, they were heading towards this idea that that these holographic entities were self-aware and have rights to continue. And you know, will we have another holographic crew, or I mean, I don't know what the context of the show is. None of us
so
do.
interesting to
You know.
see
How
just
creepy-
holographic
how
crew
creepy would it-
member.
How creepy would it be if at the end of season 1, Picard just says computer and program and everyone disappears? From the
It was all a dream.
It was all a dream.
but that's I mean, I guess that would be a wonderful way to continue the exploration of rights in general, because it's still a conversation that we're having as a society, but also as we get closer and closer to developing, you know, some of the first nascent AIs in our society, that'll give people a template in which to explore that as well. And I think I think that's a very good guess on your part, to imagine how holographic technology will come into play in the new series.
The other
Great
thing
question.
is, I wonder if after Nemesis they ever found Data or not in that explosion. Because Nemesis and Nebula was interfering with everything. It would be, and nothing on the Enterprise E or the Romulan ships ever worked. And I wonder if either people were trying to look for Data, they ever tried replicating Data, they worked with B4 more, or what happened.
The countdown book tells you.
Yeah, B4. It's basically they downloaded Data into B4, and he's just Data.
I think that's a horrible fate for poor B4. So I have a personal theory that B4 was I think Data says in Nemesis that B4 was built as an assistant to Soon to do some of the functions that Soon couldn't do, because, you know, an android can do it faster. So he's a rudimentary version of what Data and Lore are going to be, but he's meant to be like a lab assistant basically. So my theory is that he actually builds up a brand new Data. And what's wonderful about this is that you have the possibility where B4 may not design him to look like Brent Spiner. He may design him to look very different, or he might look terrible. Like, he might not have this, without having Soon there to help him. It might be a very like Frankenstein type creation, but voiced by Brent. Might be a very interesting way to go, I think, in the show. And it wouldn't hurt canon, as it were, because again, that book, the comic book, inspires canon, but it doesn't have to be canon. And so it could be an interesting thing.
Brent Spiner has gone on record as saying that the idea was for Data to be downloaded into B4. You know, that Nemesis was not supposed to be the end.
Right.
No.
A couple of people have stated that, you know, there was full intention to continue making more Next Generation films, and the way they were going to bring Data back was B4. So.
Well, it'll be an interesting human rights or robot rights conversation if B4 is suppressed to let the dominant Data be the host of that body.
Erase B4.
Save B4 hashtag. I'm starting it right now. Cool. Anything else? Like I guess.
How fast do you think they'll go? Do you think they'll go to Warp 13 like we saw in All Good Things?
I think it's going to be a whole new. I'm guessing it's going to be a whole new technology of travel, and I'm guessing that
or maybe they don't have Warp Drive. They have something else.
They'll be
That would
hopping
be
through
cool.
that mycelial network. I know it.
How great would it be if they don't have warp drive? They use something else instead to get everywhere.
For sure. I would imagine that that's going to be something that
Maybe
you
it's
could
just
bring to the
transporters
table.
to get everywhere.
Well, if you go by J.J. Abrams' universe, there, then yes, because you can beam from Earth to Klingon.
Well, we saw in Voyager there was a planet they went to in like the first or second season where they used the transporter to get to different worlds in the Delta Quadrant.
With the that was one with the creepy pleasure guy. Do you remember him?
I missed that
yes,
one. Apparently.
he totally tries to seduce. He's very touchy with Captain Janeway, and she looks very uncomfortable in the episode. He's like, "I do not understand why you do not want to enjoy the pleasures I have here before you." It's like a very that's right. They could have used that.
Yeah, where B'Elanna and Seska and Tuvok tried to.
That's in season 1 of Voyager, Doctor. I thought you watched season 1.
I endured it, but I can't recall that episode.
But yeah, so as you can see, there's definitely precedence for more advanced technology already existing out there with other beings, and I like that. I liked hints. I always like hints of like a more advanced civilization coming across the Federation civilizations, which is pretty cool. So. It'd be neat if we.
I'm wondering too, 20 years after Nemesis, where are the changelings at?
What was their fate? Didn't their planet burn up or something like that? Or I can't remember.
Odo went back to his planet to get rid of the disease, but 20 years later, he was there to teach the alien race about humanity.
Yeah,
compassion and all that. Yeah, I think the scenario for the show will probably be something where they can kind of isolate Picard and they don't.
Yeah.
They don't answer a lot of these, continuity questions because even Voyager was sort of an attempt to get away from that kind of scenario. I don't exactly know why, but maybe it just becomes too much of a burden.
Well, otherwise, this new Picard show could end up becoming, DS9 Take 2 or Voyager 2. But yeah, it needs.
Well, there's a lot of directions you could go. I think there's only been 2 species outside of that galaxy that we've seen that have come. Like, wasn't the Doomsday Machine from the original series, and the species where Scotty introduces Green? That's the only 2 species that have been outside of the galaxy, right? Everybody else is
V'ger may have originated from just outside the galaxy as well, like the
whale thing from Star Trek.
Oh yeah, the probe.
Oh yeah,
the probe from the whale.
Yeah.
But it always seems like things that visit us from other galaxies are just long and hard. But anyway, sorry.
It'd be kind of cool if we could go outside of our galaxy and see something for once, or them go to another galaxy.
Sorry. I'm under the weather. I'm not myself. But anyway.
Well, on that note, live long and prosper.
Before you go, I just want to get everyone's final kind of hope for the TNG. I'm sorry, TNG Part 2 for fuller TNG.
That's what you really want.
I know. That's what I think. That's what a lot of people really want. And I'll go ahead and start. And I know the Doctor will probably want to end. So Rob and Chris, you'll have to go in between. But I'm just like trying to keep my expectations as limited as possible. I do have some, but they're very flexible expectations. And mainly it's just, I think when it boils down to it, what I love about TNG is those characters, the core 7 or 8 characters that we have there. And for me, ultimately, an exploration of those characters, however it's done, as long as it kind of doesn't, as the Doctor is worried about, and many are, doesn't destroy these wonderful events that we that we had for them. As long as that's all, it's all the traditions kept. I'm sure it's going to be wonderful, but I have very few expectations about the setting or anything else, and I'm excited to see what's going to be revealed to us in the next few months. And my guess is that we'll get it by 2020, the show, and I'd love to hear when you guys think it'll debut.
Have no clue on when it would debut, but I'm hopeful for the show. I would like to see Ambassador Worf come back.
I think all those things are on the table, I'm sure. Very cool. And Rob?
Yeah, I'm really excited, very excited. I'm excited to see, Patrick Stewart said about how, he's not the same man, how he's changed. It sounds as if he might be a bit jaded, a bit darker. Is it going to be a bit grittier? So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I think around 2020, because then hopefully it'd still be running alongside Discovery. So we'll have 2 treks, maybe even 3. Never know. Yeah,
I'm just wondering if it's going to be on CBS or CBS All Access.
You can probably safely assume it's going to be on All Access. So start saving your pennies and and get ready to be a subscriber. I doubt they're going to put this on, except for in Canada, on regular television.
It'll be Netflix for me.
Yeah, or Netflix for you.
I'm like I said, I'm just waiting to hear details. Right now all we have is a cast announcement. That's great, but I need to know more.
Man, share your emotions. Are you excited to see me again?
I mean, I think I've gone on record. My favorite crew is the original crew.
Right.
I'm not and probably second would be DS9. So I'm not as enamored of Next Generation. To just say, "Oh my God, it's Picard." I mean, I would watch the old crew read the phone book. I mean, I love Star Trek 5. So
William Shatner is back as Captain Kirk in the Nexus.
Now you got me. Just like, I don't care. But I mean, Picard is not
Star Trek 6.
Huh?
Michael Dorn was in Star Trek 6, so you can have.
Yes, that's right.
You can have the best of both worlds.
The Next Generation is connected to the original series in a lot of ways.
Yes, absolutely.
We don't have any more time as we've gone on for an hour, and I think that's already too long for very little information that we have, because it's otherwise all just us having a speculation.
We're just so hyped.
But what I will say is that there's stuff I have in my notes that we couldn't cover today, but I just want to say that there's a lot of exciting news about the DS9 doc coming out of STLV, and so you're gonna get some of your wishes come true. And I think that what this has proven is that shows the success of Star Trek Discovery, be it controversial or not, has kind of paved the way for Star Trek's newest or hopefully next golden era, and I'm really happy to be alive in this time. All right, so anyways, live long and prosper, everybody. It was wonderful. Thank you for I only expected Rob, so it's great that we had a whole summit. So that's awesome. And for those of you who've been chatting on the YouTube, I'm sorry I couldn't interact with you, but now I'm going to go and read your comments. It's probably just Humbert. And then
no, a lot of comments. A lot of comments.
Oh, right on.
Everybody's in here. All your regulars.
Oh, cool, man. All right. Well, I can't wait to see them, because I can't see them on my screen, and that's really annoying.
Have another screen.
YouTube. My screen is bollocks. All right. Bye-bye, everybody, and thank you on this very first live Starfleet Boy. Bye-bye.